And so part of the way that you do that sometimes is through rhetoric, but actually getting the deal and selling it is going to be difficult for her caucus. But I think if they really want to solve a problem and not perpetuate a problem, they're going to have to take the deal.
But we're not finished with Miss Pelosi yet, Dana.
Oh.
We still have the crumb gaffe.
Okay.
Now, this, I think, is much more significant than the 5 white guys. This makes her totally out of touch. I know she's, what is she worth, $90 million or something like that? She's been very successful. Her husband's successful. $1,000. It's a lot of money, like Red said, for anybody.
That's at least one haircut for her. I mean, she's paid, it's a lot of money.
With color or no?
I don't know, but she's a multi-millionaire.
Touch-up only.
Her mansion is insane, if you've ever seen her mansion in California. So and she calls 5 figures a crumb, and she's not even a Republican.
Could you run an ad like this of a little cut of Pelosi saying something about crumbs?
Yeah, absolutely, you could. And I don't think she necessarily. I think what they're trying to do is try to show, and what they should probably do is try to show, not just tell, that there is a big disparity, that the corporations are got a sweetheart deal from this tax reform bill, and that yes, they are giving significant bonuses all across, or they're raising wages, or they're adding paternity leave. And we're going to talk about Walmart later in the show, but it's not artful, and I think that the reality of what's happening on the economic side is really unfortunate for them. President Obama wanted to do corporate tax reform. He wanted to go from the 35 rate down to 27. Paul Ryan was at 25, and they could never actually get the deal. If they had gotten the deal, they would have been able to have economic benefits like they're seeing now, but they chose not to.
That's true. I think you guys are missing Hillary Clinton. Because normally at this time, you guys would be beating up on Hillary Clinton.
So you're mad when we bring her up, and now you're mad that we don't.
Oh, no, that's Donald Trump. That's Donald Trump and Kellyanne.
But we never
talk about it, Hillary.
But we didn't bring her up, and now you bring her up.
Oh, you know why I bring her up? Because you guys need somebody. You need a white liberal female to beat up on.
Wait, you're the one. You're the one connecting the dots. You just saw a woman. You saw a woman, and then you linked her to another woman. You're the sexist.
Oh, that's it. Misogyny.
Why do liberals have to group people?
You need Nancy more than I need Nancy. I'm the Democrat. You need Nancy because you say, hey, wait a second.
You need
Guess
therapy.
what? This tax deal is so loathsome that even Republicans don't like it. And so instead of focusing on the tremendous ripoff and the money that goes to the big corporations,
you mentioned Hillary.
We'll mention that crumbs. Oh, my God, Nancy Pelosi called $1,000 crumbs. All that she said, again, if you look at the whole statement, was as compared to the windfall going to the big corporations.
But the voters don't compare it. They see $1,000. That's grocery money for a whole month.
Listen,
I don't know where you shop, but that's grocery money.
I shop at the same store. I want to go to your store, but I'm just telling you.
That's 2 of Juan's ties.
Most Americans,
maybe 2 weeks at Whole Foods for
understand that the rich are the ones getting the big payoff.
Evil rich people. They're actually giving Walmart. We're talking about later $400 billion, I guess, to their workers. That's terrible. See, we're learning that that's terrible.
Oh yeah.
According to a liberal, if you actually give back to your workers, that's evil and wrong.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Also, another episode of, Juan Williams is moving the goalpost. But let me just say, for the record, we don't sit here and disparage white liberal women or look for them to beat up on. We talk about people based on their qualifications, on the content of their statements, the facts or misstatements that they make, and then we adjudicate them on that. That's what we do.
And we beat up on President Obama, who is not a white liberal.
He's not?
For 8 years.
Oh, my God.
I think I had it handled.
I love your defense.
I
love your defense.
Excellent. Perry Mason in the house.
All right.
I had it so buttoned up.
A Facebook post you have to see from a top brass Pentagon. It's great. But, of course, the liberal media wouldn't think so. Up next.
Surrender or die. In a gentle reminder that war is not a game of nude Yahtzee, a military leader told troops that if ISIS fighters don't surrender, beat them to death with a shovel. I know, I think I need to lie down. He says, kill the enemy? What are we, monsters? In his Facebook post, senior enlisted advisor to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Army Command Sergeant Major John Wayne Troxell, he wrote this: if they surrender, we will safeguard them to their detainee facility cell, provide them with chow, a cot, and due process. However, if they choose not to surrender, then we will kill them with extreme prejudice, whether that be through security force assistance by dropping bombs on them, shooting them in the face, that's never good, or beating them to death with our entrenching tools. So, finally, something on Facebook that isn't about your kid's Earth Day poem. Now, if this offends you, then you're as thick as an entrenchment tool, because it's that sensibility that wins wars. Problem is, we put guys like Troxel out there to hold the line against the world's monsters. Then we jump on our high horses when we actually catch a glimpse of what they have to do. Any objection to this boils down to, we kill bad guys in war? I had no idea. Of course you did. You just want to pretend you don't, so you can hold the moral high ground. As the saying goes, it's easy to be a holy man on a mountain or in the Hollywood Hills. So we could use more of this advice, not less. And if this man is punished for it, I might have to break out my shovel. So, Dana, ABC said this kind of comment raised eyebrows.
Oh, please.
I always like that phrase. It raised eyebrows.
It's like saying it's interesting.
Yes.
And also, I love that his name is John Wayne.
Yeah.
He was meant to be a soldier. I can't believe people complained about this.
I'm not. It's just
This
the
is
way.
in the-
No, I'm more. It's news. That's what's interesting to me. It's like, oh my God, this guy.
ABC picked it up and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
shouldn't
and
talk
Washington
this way.
Post did it, and
Well,
Fox
I'm
News
sure,
did it.
you know, I would love to ask the ISIS guys what they thought of when they were raping the Yazidi women. Who
Yeah.
are still are extremely traumatized and
Yeah.
trying to get their lives back together.
Yeah, you know, Juan,
Sure they didn't ask.
Juan, I don't think you could argue against killing terrorists who won't surrender, right? You got to be for that.
Yeah.
Killing them brutally with a shovel,
God.
No.
and not one of those beach
But,
shovels.
but see, they
here's the
do
re-
that so that we don't have to think about it.
But here's the real news, right?
Yeah.
I like to think about
I
it.
sit here every night at 5, and you guys tell me that President Trump has annihilated, defeated, cleared out, they're gone. But here comes John Wayne Troxel, and he says, oh, no, we're still fighting, that this fight is not over.
Oh, no one said it's
No one
over.
said it
yeah,
was
you guys
over.
told me
No,
that
I
we
never-
should
I said it
declare
lasts
victory.
forever.
That's
No.
what you
That's
told
such
me.
a lie.
You told America.
I have said here
yeah.
that it's
And
an
here-
existential threat that we're going to be
That's
fighting
right.
for a lifetime.
And it continues, and it morphs, and it goes into online threats, and they go to other countries. They go to Africa. They go to Philippines. They
this.
go to Syria.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing that came out this week, and I think why this comment is so insensitive, even for our warriors.
Insensitive.
Because guess what? AP reported this week 11,000 civilians died in the effort for the
He's not saying,
forces to take
he's not
over
saying killing
Mosul.
civilians.
Well,
he's
what
saying,
he's saying,
killing ISIS.
right? But the
Helps
thing
protect
is,
civilians.
Yes, exactly right. So in other words, we want to protect civilians, but
Right.
if you go about it in a gross manner where you're just saying, we're going to annihilate you, roll you
That's
over.
insensitive to the military to say that they kill in a gross
Oh, well,
manner.
then wait a minute. So it's not
Gross manner.
insensitive when their military leader, the top,
There's no
the
relativism.
top
no
enlisted
relativism.
man says, we're going to take our shovel and you think, come on.
No, there's no relativism. You can say that about a terrorist, but don't say that our military men are sloppy or gross. when
Never
it comes to
said that.
protecting
He's
them.
the
You
one
just said
that's
it was-
saying. He's the one that's saying we're going to attack you in a sloppy, gross manner.
No, you know what's sloppy is indiscriminately bombing people from the air. And you know what's really neat and tidy? Knocking someone in the head with a shovel. There's no
Better.
civilian casualties with that.
That'd be better.
That's one-on-one.
You win on that
And
one.
I'm sick of listening. Under Obama, it was all about human
Yeah.
rights.
Get
for the
after him
terrorists.
again.
Human rights. It was about, right, they were playing soccer.
Yeah.
You know, we were giving them video
Harry
games at
Potter
Gitmo.
movies.
Yeah, they were
Yes.
watching movies. They were all getting lawyers. The Trump military
all
cares
getting
about their
lawyers.
last rights.
Oh, my God.
That's it. 72 virgins, however many it takes, leave them dead in the street. And it's finally time to do it. And you've seen the results. They're not having lawyers pick targets. They've uncuffed the military. And yeah, there's been civilian casualties, and that's very horrible. But I think by not doing anything on the ground over there, that's in the long run going to cause more civilian casualties.
And by the way, civilian casualties will be reduced the more we use drones, because we're going to be able to go in and wait for those. We will be able to avoid civilians and just wait for those guys. And by the way, civilians die because the terrorists are using them
Correct.
as shields.
Yep.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Fox, make them as elegant and as wonderful as possible.
Well, I heard a story about an SAS soldier that beheaded one of the jihadis with like a shovel or a spade, and then he cut off his arms and then used it to beat the other terrorists. Was that?
Did you
was
actually
that
hear
nice?
this story?
Eloquence as always.
I can imagine
you
that
doubting
you asked for
Kimberly?
eloquence.
Yes.
And my point is,
War
war
stories
is
with
war.
Kimberly
And
Guilfoyle.
people are talking about, yeah, that's my kind of war story. And
Yeah,
people are
baby.
talking about raising eyebrows.
Yeah.
Well, they're cutting off heads and eyebrows. You know,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
what's happening. So when you see this, I don't care about their last rites. They don't care about us. They have no civility whatsoever. The rapes, the pillaging, the beheading, the global terrorism that's going on. So at least we're doing something about it. We've returned the rules of engagement to what they should have been before, right? What they were prior to the Obama administration. And now you have people actually in the arena and in the field that actually know what they're doing. And the president is listening to them. How refreshing. And guess what that is producing? Results.
Did you hear the story about the Gitmo detainees who are like jumping on the Me Too issue? They claim that they're being
Unbelievable.
sexually harassed because they're being frisked before they go into court.
Right.
Yeah. Because they're being
Yeah,
checked.
Khaled Sheikh Mohammed said that groin searches are sexual harassment.
Yeah. That takes.
I think Gloria Allred is just representing KSM now. But I mean, and listen, no one cares about KSM down there. No one's interested in that. So I don't know where he thinks he's coming on.
Well, the thing was that there were new people put in place, and the new people had new ways of conducting the searches. Actually, the court said that they can't search some of the lawyers' documents before. So this just changed it. But I must say that if we're talking about language on
Yeah,
this
have you gone through TSA these days? What's happened to me in their place?
Really?
Well, I'm just saying, if they pull you aside, if they do the pat, the serve, the whole situation.
I requested.
So I'm not
actually.
worried about the terrorists.
We must move on. A teacher was dragged out of a school board meeting and arrested for questioning her boss's pay. Now she's encouraging others to take a stand ahead.
Well, we beat ourselves again. We showed you this stunning video yesterday. A middle school teacher in Louisiana ejected from a school board meeting and then arrested for questioning the $30,000 pay raise for her district school superintendent. Now, all she wanted was more money for classrooms and for teachers. Daisha Hargrave is now speaking out.
By silencing my voice, they've also taken away or tried to take away my First Amendment rights to speak, and I'm appalled at this, and you should be too. This particular issue directly involved me, directly involved my students, my fellow educators, and support staff, cafeteria workers, citizens outside of the school system even. I'm hoping that you choose to speak out after seeing what happened to me.
And here's Superintendent Jerome Puyai's side of things.
She was questioning if you deserve a raise. You know, can't you use it better in the classroom? You can always use more money in the classroom. But when is a good time for a superintendent to get a raise? My sisters, my family, we're all educators. For those threats against them, more people were hurt. It is not fair to our families.
So this, I mean, clearly he's very emotional because there has now been such a wave of response from across the country. The teachers' unions have organized marches and protests in Louisiana to support Ms. Hargrave. Meanwhile, the superintendent says, as you heard, his family is getting threats from people. What do you make of this, Jesse?
It looked very heavy-handed. I didn't see what happened in the beginning, but she's like one of the teachers of the year, the year
2015,
before.
2016.
So something tells me she wasn't, throwing things.
Oh, no.
But, it just looks like just really two heavy-handed tactics to arrest someone and then charge her, too.
No, they did not charge
Well, they
her.
didn't. Well, they
Arrested
probably booked her, so they booked her.
No. The sheriffs arrested her in the hallway, pushed her down, handcuffed her.
Right.
Everybody's videotaping it, which is the videotape we saw. Then they take her out to the car, but the Abbeville DA said there was no
Declined
charge.
to
Okay.
charge.
Well, I think she's really drawn a lot of
But she was
attention
still
to the
taken into
controversy.
custody, so they have to make a report of that.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so, and the point is, this guy's getting a hefty raise, and the teachers aren't making a lot of money, and the schools are failing. And I think that's the point, is that the schools are not only failing, the test grades are terrible, and they're spending a boatload of taxpayer money in the schools. The test scores are terrible, it's freezing. Kids are wearing parkas in the middle of math class. So obviously there's a lot more money to be used a lot more efficiently, and we have to look at how this money's being spent.
So Dana,
Parkas.
let me just stand up here for the superintendent. He says that in fact the school district is one of the higher rated school districts in the state of Louisiana, that he's not paid on par with his peers as superintendents, and that's all he wanted. And that there's always a good time to put more money into schools and staff, but why does it mean that he can't have a raise?
Well, local government is the absolute hardest form of government because it is down when you get down to dollars and cents. It's not talking about $30 billion for this or that. You're actually talking about maybe 33.5% of increase over the past 50 years, probably in Louisiana schools. He also said, though, to CBS News, I'm the superintendent. I'm to blame. I should have stood up. That's what you want to hear, and it's the truth. I should have stood up and let her speak. So perhaps everybody can get past this because the people that are really hurting are the kids. It's great that they're performing well, and actually Louisiana schools came back quite successfully after Hurricane Katrina, and so they're making some good progress. But it's never going to be enough for teachers who want to do better for their students and the parents who we saw in Baltimore the other day upset about the situation.
I was just going to raise this
The weather.
topic. I'm glad you did. So on the other hand, you have a situation in Baltimore where you have young people unable to attend school. This is mostly minority, low-income kids going to Baltimore public schools, Baltimore City public schools, and they can't, even if they go, learn much because they are so cold because the schools are not being heated. Governor Hogan, a Republican in Maryland, has now given $2.5 million to try to expedite repairs that will get these schoolrooms heated. But you talk about taking away educational opportunity, Greg. I want to hear somebody say this is an outrage.
This is an outrage.
Thank you.
Jinx.
All right, coming up. So, you know what? Obviously, they spent a lot of money in Baltimore, and it doesn't do any good. So what does that tell you? It's not
management.
It's not. Yeah, it's not about the money. But the other story, I wanted to comment on that. It's not about the debate. It's what happened in the hallway. And I want to follow Juan's logic. I think that if the cop were a white woman, that wouldn't have turned out that way, right? Because the white woman would have understood the white woman better and would not have arrested her. See, that's your logic, Juan.
Is that right?
We have to have like race
Wow, he flipped
to like
that on
race.
you.
But my other more important point, imagine if there were no smartphones. We probably never would know this story. So it's harder to get away with stuff when you actually have surveillance. And it goes back to our point about, we were going to do this FISA story. There's a hypocrisy if you come out against surveillance about terror, but you're okay with civilians surveilling each other. You have more freedom for people like this woman to speak her mind when people have phones to follow and cover this stuff and expose when some kind of heavy-handed behavior happens. Lastly, heavy-handed behavior like that should not be met with heavy-handed mob behavior online.
Right.
Like, we get it.
The threats.
What happened was wrong.
Right.
But we got to stop. We got to stop this mob stuff where we all jump
Especially
on.
when it becomes a national story, like
Yeah.
as you
Well,
said. Like,
yes.
this
Local
never
becomes
would have
national.
been. Yeah.
Local
Right, but I couldn't agree more. We don't need the mob stuff. But Kimberly,
Yes.
what do you think about the idea that she is being inhibited from just speaking out in opposition to the authorities?
Well, listen, I mean, I think it's reprehensible. I've worked as an educator. My mother was a teacher. We both worked with special needs children. And just the thought that children aren't able to get a proper education because they don't even have heat in the classrooms, that bothers me. It's abhorrent. But also when you have a teacher that's passionate, that's been recognized as a strong advocate and an excellent educator.
Terrific.
It's sad when someone is trying to silence her voice. And you're right, it was heavy-handed. I think like everyone's living on Regret Island right now because like if we could only just take it back.
TV show, Regret Island. That is a great
And then
idea.
and your apology has to be good enough to get off.
Well, you go to Regret Island to work your way off Regret Island. That's what we do with all the sexual harassment.
Mark Burnett, get on the phone.
We put them on Regret Island. And in order to get their job back after all the sexual harassment guilt, they got to like earn their way off Regret
Coming
Island.
up after The Bachelor.
All right.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Oh, well, enough
Somebody
of
call our
confession.
lawyers to put that down.
Enough. We
Our
have
idea first.
Father Waters standing by. Is the
That's a
Trump
stretch.
administration's anti-marijuana agenda about to go up in smoke? Ahead.
Oh my God.
You know,
The Trump administration moved last week to tighten federal oversight of marijuana in America, and there's been a growing backlash within the Republican Party since. One report says Trump voters who use the drug feel it's the first time they have felt let down by the man they helped elect. The crackdown could pose a problem for some GOP lawmakers in the midterms. Colorado Senator Cory Gardner was among the first to publicly oppose the decision by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Okay, so Dana, politics kind of interesting. You have some interesting bedfellows on this, both sides.
Yeah, so Colorado, I grew up there, and
I came for
high
you for
school,
that reason,
college,
not
and
because-
this is what I think. I understand that Colorado overwhelmingly voted for this, and they want it, but it doesn't erase the fact that Congress has a law on the books that says the federal government should treat marijuana in a certain way, and President Obama had a memo that said, district attorneys or U.S. attorneys, just kind of, don't worry about prosecuting those. And Attorney General Jeff Sessions basically said, well, actually, you know what? It is a law, and if the U.S. attorneys feel like they need to do it, go for it. What I think is actually should happen is that the congressional members who care a lot about this, then they should get on board to some sort of legislation and try to persuade their colleagues to vote for it. Because one of the things that the left tries to say is that President Trump is lawless, when actually the administration is absolutely trying to follow the law and saying, this is what the law says. If you want us to change it, you're going to have to do something about it. And they've done that on several different things. This is just the latest one.
But I would argue that from a conservative point of view, and I think this point was raised by Jason Lewis, who's a Republican from Minnesota, that if you believe in limited government, if you make the argument, as the Trump folks do all the time, that states, and we should allow the states to try to set the laws and enforce their laws, that this is in violation of what Trump's been talking about all along.
Well, then they should pass a law that takes it off the federal books.
Well, I just think the law, from what President Obama did, was to say we don't have to go through the big argument and everybody saying, oh, you must smoke marijuana if you... Forget that. Let's just say there's better use of law enforcement time and authority than going after some kid smoking a joint.
But Jeff Sessions didn't say prosecute. He said use your discretion, U.S. attorneys. It's up to you.
I think he did it in such a way, Dana, as to threaten that.
All right, well, everyone has an opinion. Greg, what's yours?
I agree with Juan.
Oh, no.
Take a sip of the unicorn. Drink from the cup.
January 11th, 2018.
Drink the antidote to the poison.
Poor guy.
Okay.
It's better be fast acting.
It's okay.
Tell my wife I love her.
Because you know what? I'm a stable genius.
Yes. I always go back to you can't ban something because you don't like it. If that were the case, I would have banned truffle oil a long time ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I agree.
the smell makes me sick. It's the Maroon 5 of oil. Did you notice that?
Oh, you're back on them
So it's
again.
amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are. I always, I'm for legalization, but I'm also aware that there will be consequences for legalization. There are consequences for legalized driving. At some point, driving became legal, and every day millions of people are hurtling down the road in 2 tons of metal, going 65 miles an hour. And you're telling me that sitting on a couch smoking a joint is a high-risk activity? We engage in high-risk activities and accept death. We accept death every day. We don't want to die, but we look and we know that I don't know how many was it? Is it about 30,000 a year die from car accidents? More maybe. But we accept it. We accept a lot of death, but yet we can't accept something that has yet to be proved that it's as deadly as alcohol. Not even close. Not even close to alcohol. Ooh. Anyway. The high's wearing off, so I got to
Yeah, I can tell. It's like really awkward there for a moment, I don't know. All right, Jesse, what do you make of this?
I just think that Sessions should crack down on leakers instead of pot. This is not a big priority. I think states' rights should overrule it, but if you're going to do it the right way, have the Congress step in. And listen, Colorado, I think he lost that state by about 5%. Oregon, he lost that. He lost California huge. Vermont, he lost it big. I think Massachusetts is now decriminalizing it. So the states that have it, I don't think are Trump states. So there could be some politics at play. But as you said, this thing's moving forward. It's moving forward fast. If they get it in Florida, with the problems that Florida already has, if you add legal weed to the mix in Florida, we're going to be doing a Florida story every single day on the
we
pod.
might not. Actually, it might be a good thing. Remember,
calm people down there?
Yeah, the whole
More
point is
hanging
There's like alligators everywhere.
everybody
You wanna
has
add
a
weed?
right to their own oblivion.
They're going to be like high and devoured by the gators.
At least it won't hurt.
I mean,
up.
all that stuff is most bad behavior is due to alcohol. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Everything
Is
bad that
your
I've done in my life.
excuse? I knew it, little weirdo.
On
shorty
Regret
robe.
Island.
Yeah, Regret Island. That's Greg in his shorty robe. Okay, new controversy over some immigration comments from President Trump. That's next.
What about all the times you said